In this class, I would like to talk about CSS backgrounds using the various background properties. Backgrounds enable us to create very nice effects in our web pages. On this college website here, we have a background image in the navigation bar and also in the header. Notice we have a full width header. As I scroll down, we have a right-hand navigation bar, and if you notice behind it, you can see some kind of a background image. At the bottom of the page, in our fixed width footer, we have that repeated background that we have seen in the header. If you notice at the top of the page, there is this very pretty background, and it is centered within the browser window. It was placed there using some background position properties. Here on the Southwest page, we have a fixed width header with a gradient background image. It also has some transparency, which will be covered in another class. You will also notice on the right, there is this pattern background that is placed there using the background position property. As I scroll, notice the page scrolls up, but the background stays in one position, enabling us to see it between the different elements. This is accomplished using the background attachment property. So there are several different background properties that allow us to do a lot of nice effects on our web page. So let's start learning about background properties. Here in my demo website, I have a simple page with a white background, a header with a background color, and a container in the middle and some content. I do not have a lot of content, and I have a minimal amount of CSS. I will first look at the background image. We begin with the value URL and in parentheses the name of the image. That image file name does not need to be in quotations, however you may see it in quotations. My BG_tile image, by default a background image tiles. It will continue tiling until there is no more room left in the browser window. It starts at the upper left-hand corner and goes all the way down to the lower right-hand corner. Notice also that the background image is showing up inside my inner container, but not inside my header. That is because my header has a background color. In this case, the background color will take precedence over the background image, which is set in the body. Because there are no background properties set in the main element, it will inherit the background image. If I were to set a background color in my body, and I'll set that to red, notice we do not see that color. The background image will take precedence over a background color. You may see them used together. In the event that the image doesn't load, we will still have a color. The background repeat property enables us to determine how this image tiles. By default, the value is repeat, as we have seen it tiles. If I were to set it to no repeat, you see we have one image sitting in the upper left-hand corner. If I were to set it to repeat X, you see that it will repeat across the X-axis. So at the upper left-hand corner of my web page, that is the intersection of the X and Y-axis. If we were to set this to repeat Y, it would repeat vertically down the Y-axis. And let's learn about the background position property. This enables us to further refine where the background image is placed with respect to the container. The background position property can take a word, so we can position it across the horizontal axis, which would be left, center, or right, and we can position it vertically on the y-axis, which is top, center, and bottom. So the background position takes two values. The first value is the horizontal position. The second value is the vertical position. If I were to position it center on the horizontal and then top on the vertical, they are not comma separated, we see that on the horizontal axis from left to right, it is in the center. On the vertical axis from top to bottom, it is at the top. Should I change the top bottom? Now we see it's at the bottom. Why is it not at the bottom of my window? Because this is the end of my body tag. The content in your browser only extends the height of the content in your document. It does not extend all the way down to the browser window. We can also use percents. So if I were to say 10%, 20%, here it is 10% across on the horizontal or x-axis, 20% down on the vertical or y-axis. You can use percents, and you can also use pixels. Here we see it is moved from the horizontal across from the left 50 down. Should I wish to center it, I can simply say center, center, or 50%, 50%. Supposing I was to use a background repeat, such as repeat X, along with a background position. How would that work as we are repeating along the x-axis? We would still repeat along the x-axis. On the vertical axis, it would be centered, and you can see it that it is centered. Remember, it is centered within our web page, not within the browser window. It is also centered on the horizontal. It's hard to understand how it does that because it is still going all the way from the left to the right. Notice where my image appears. It does not appear at the beginning. It appears further into that image. The browser is actually starting it at a different location in order to use that center value. So if I were to change center to left, which is the default, you can see that my image is at its original starting point. It is still repeating on the horizontal axis, and it is still centered vertically within the website. You generally don't use positioning with repeat X or repeat Y. I am going to use a different image, and I'm going to repeat that down the Y-axis. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a background color, and I'm going to match that background color to the color inside this background image. You will commonly see background colors and background images being used together when the background image does not necessarily cover the entire page. Here you see a relatively nice effect. However, we would need to edit our image a little bit in Photoshop and get rid of this line to make it a nice, seamless design. I don't necessarily want that background color behind my content. It makes it hard to read. What I can do is I can set a background color. The background color property is set for my middle container. The background color property is also set for the body. Remember, the closest rule applies. The background color for the container will take precedence over the background color set for the body. If I were to set the background attachment to fixed, the default being scroll, I'm going to shrink my page here. Everything scrolls. The background scrolls with the page. This is the default. And this only works when you have a scroll bar. When I set the background attachment property to fixed, notice the content scrolls but not the background. So this is the background attachment property,